Hello and welcome. What's the dial-up?
The dial-up, we were talking yesterday about using your control panel
Oh yes.
and dialing up confidence level. So I was able to relax.
Hypnotherapy, hypnosis. Did you map out what you wanted with this dial, this control panel, and did you record your own voice doing it, or did somebody?
Oh, my husband did it for me yesterday.
So did he tell you? So, the proof of the pudding, as they say, to use that phrase, that metaphor, that kinesthetic phrase, which we'll look at later, is, did it have any effect? Was there any change? Proof of the pudding eating?
I felt really good this morning.
Do you feel more confident though? This is about being specific.
Do I feel more confident?
If that's
I feel more confident. I would say I feel more confident. I've been very active this morning. I've been very bold.
Did you calibrate? And it is very important, and I know it seems like I'm picking on you, Teresa, but it's very important that we calibrate beforehand. Okay, so we want confidence. What level of confidence are we at?
Yeah, no, that didn't happen because I was completely out, so there was no interaction. So I think if I did it to somebody else, I would just do that. I wouldn't do a deepener. I would keep them a little bit lighter.
Well, hang on a minute. When you asked him to do this for you and when you charted it out yourself,
yeah,
what level of confidence out of 10 were you at?
7, 8.
So you're at 7, 8. And now we can ask you, where are you at now?
I feel like an 8, 9.
So you do sense an improvement?
Yeah.
Imagine if there was something that you couldn't do before having the therapy, that you could do after having therapy that involved your level of confidence. What would that be?
I think honestly our conversation this morning about starting workshops, I think that shows that there was a greater increase in confidence. There was no hesitation.
Okay.
There was or less hesitation. So when we were previously talking about starting new programs, there was less fear based around that. I didn't have to talk myself out or figure out the whys.
Well, that's good. Now that the analysis comes in, because there does need to be analysis. There does need to be calibration before and calibration afterwards.
Right. And it's a hard thing to measure, I think, but most of these things are intangible.
Exactly. But this is what will put you head and shoulders above the others, because we are making the intangible tangible. So if somebody comes to see you for something specific, or you do one of your electronic Skype type things, first thing to do is to calibrate. So they'll be talking, after the small talk, they'll be talking and all immersed in their problem. You notice exactly how they're phrasing everything. Notice voice tone, pitch, tonality, facial expression, body posture. There's a load of NLP things that we can go into, but certainly that you need rapport, as we said yesterday. Without rapport, everything else could be wasted. Not always, but there's a possibility that they have a very nice time, they're quite relaxed, but then nothing is actioned. And good therapy is all about the action. So we take a measurement, first of all, of no matter what they're saying. Obviously, you be polite, be empathetic. So you want to measure. And one of the things that you can say in your first stage of information gathering, rapport build. In that rapport build, you want to have established rapport so that you can meta question, which is a more in-depth form of questioning than a loved one would normally interact with you at that level, being as it was your husband that was doing it. But he was doing it, of course, from your script, from what you devised. So rapport is that you're getting on so well with the person that they feel safe and comfortable enough with you to tell you the truth. Often at those points of feeling safe and secure enough with you to tell you the truth, they reveal something to themselves that they wouldn't otherwise have revealed. those are the times when somebody says, oh, I've never told anybody that before. Oh, oh goodness me. Because they're worried about being judged ordinarily. So when you've got rapport, you can do information gathering. And in that information gathering, it's not only the content of what is said, it's the form in how it's said. It's the distancing language. It's whether they, what I mean by that is when they say, well, you know what it's like when you've had a bad time in a relationship and you're really guarded when you go into the net, you don't really want to start dating again. They're talking about themselves in the third person. And so to bring somebody back to first person singular, can you say that again using the first person? You wouldn't say that to your wife or husband ordinarily, but as a therapist, and when a loved one is acting as your therapist, then these are the times to go into a kind of meta questioning, it's called. Meta is from the Greek, which means beyond. You're going beyond normal questioning to get to the truth, but with the absolute intention of helping the person. And when that person understands that you're doing it with the best of intentions, they will soften and they will answer and they won't be insulted. But in ordinary conversation with friends, etc., they'll be insulted because usually we want to hide things from each other and usually we don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of a problem. So in the first instance, the first step is rapport build. In that rapport build, you want to establish a safety, a comfort so that the person can talk to you without worrying about being judged or without being chastised, without having somebody say something back too quickly and missing the point. So in that information gathering stage after rapport is ultimate, get the rapport. In the information gathering stage of rapport building, you want to establish a scale of what this problem is, what would be different if it wasn't here, what would they be doing differently so that afterwards when they do it, they know they're fixed, if you like, and all the information you can possibly have about this thing, whatever this thing happened to be. So in your case, it was confidence. So we wanted a level of 0 being no confidence at all, and 10 being the ultimate confidence. Where were you on the scale? You were a 7, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, you were a 7. And so we would say, what kind of things would you find yourself doing if you were at a 10 instead of a 7? What would you do if you were at a 10 that you wouldn't be doing at a 7? You see where I'm going? In order to know that this has worked afterwards, what would have to be different? What would you find yourself doing that you wouldn't have done before? So, for example, when one of my clients was terrified of heights, I asked the severity of this fear of heights, and I ended up going to get a stepladder. And I put the stepladder in the middle of the office, and I said, how high can you go on the stepladder before you feel uncomfortable? And they still explained, oh, I'd get sweaty palms, my heart would start beating too loudly. And I said, okay, show me. That sounds quite cruel, doesn't it? But in order to have a measure, I said to the person, and this was a nurse, by the way, and she didn't believe in hypnosis. And yet somebody had come to see me that she didn't think could stop smoking, and they stopped smoking after 40 years. And so she said, I think she started the conversation with, well, come on then, let's see what you've got. Apparently you can do this sort of stuff and I can't get over it myself, blah, blah, blah. So when she said she couldn't possibly get beyond the second rung on the stepladder because of what would happen, remember, it wasn't happening then. So I needed her to demonstrate to me that this was real. So she went on the first step and I could see she was already visibly shaking. She went on the second rung and yes, lo and behold, her palms were sweaty and she was visibly uncomfortable, and she was shaking quite profusely. So I told her to get down, and she sat. And when somebody's very stressed and then they can relax, then they're far more relaxed than before they were stressed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So sometimes we get people stressed so that they'll recognize the difference between being stressed and being relaxed. So once she sat down, I then got her into we'll go through the 10 steps. I got her into a comfortable position and we began our stuff. At the end, the important thing is, at the end, I had a measure. So she said, typically, well, I was very relaxed. It was very nice, but I don't know if I was hypnotized. I could hear everything you were saying. Yes, if I had a penny for every time somebody said that. Right, okay. So I said, would you like to get on the step ladder? It was only a small step ladder. And she says, oh yeah, of course. And she went to the top of the step ladder, and she was laughing, surprising herself that she could do it. In that moment, people typically say, I can't believe I'm doing this. It's a very important moment because you have to step in and say, believe that you're doing it. One of the NLP phrases is, put it in the place where the sun comes up in the morning. What? Sounds really odd when you're not in the moment. But if somebody says, I don't believe this is true, I don't believe this is happening, let them realize that it's happening so they can reflect on it before. Otherwise, they might backtrack. Everything wonderful is kind of too good to be true, isn't it? But nothing is so bad as to be untrue.
So,
yeah.
Can I ask, would you anchor it at that point?
Oh, here we go. Well done. Lovely for anchoring. The anchoring tends to get done by itself. We can combine, as we are doing, NLP and hypnotherapy. The anchoring, if it's some heightened state of awareness, I wouldn't anchor at that point when she's saying she doesn't believe it.
Okay.
But only anchor at a heightened point of awareness when somebody is in the absolute throes of joy or excitement or confidence, but when they're saying, I don't believe I'm doing this, that's not the time to anchor, because you'd be anchoring disbelief.
But she is believing she's doing it because she's doing it.
Yeah.
And you just say,
big one, isn't it?
You're doing, look at it, you're doing it, own it, and then anchor it.
So as long as you can engage with the person and they receive the idea that, yeah, you're right, I'm doing it, wow, look at me, then yes.
Okay.
But you need to be careful that you are anchoring the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So believe that you're doing it. Put it in the place where the sun comes up in the morning. This is real. This is true. Look what you're doing. Wow, look at you. Yeah, good. And she came off the step ladder and got to the place where she thought it was every day, it was normal, it was ordinary, and then you know you're in business. When they're in disbelief, it can be undone, in a sense. It all depends on what happens from that point in time, and you can't be with them every step of the way when they leave the office. So it's good to have a marker. You can have a perceptual marker of 0 to 10 in terms of confidence, or you can have a physical marker. One lady came to see me and said she couldn't meet strangers. She broke out in a sweat. She stuttered. What I did, I said, come with me. She said, what? I said, come with me. And I was at the top floor of an office. And there was another office downstairs. And we got to the 3rd step. And she said, where are you taking me? I said, I'm going to take you to meet the girls downstairs. It's Andrew Grant. It's a property developer. And she just froze and she started to shake because she knew I was going to introduce her to strangers. And when I knew she was upset enough, how cruel am I? When I'd calibrated, I took her back up and she got relaxed and we began the process. At the end of it, we've got to come down the stairs anyway for her to get out. as we're coming downstairs, I say to her, oh, just a minute, let's pop into the office then and meet the girls. She says, oh, yeah, okay. And the girls in the office were really perplexed because I said, I'd just like you to meet my client, Jane. Jane would like to say hello to you. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. And she went, hello, my name's Jane. How are you? Are you having a good day? Good weather today. And she met them all. And then it was only when we went out, I said, well done. She said, what? I said, well done. You just met some complete strangers. She said, oh, yes, I did, didn't I? Oh, wow. I can hardly believe I did that. Believe it. Yeah. Because with hypnotherapy done properly, the person just sees it, senses it as a very natural state of being. They can hardly remember that it was a problem. Yeah. And so my point is, it's very important with the first step to gain rapport, make it safe enough for the person to communicate with you, to reveal the truths to themselves and to you, knowing about confidentiality, etc., etc. To understand that form is different to content. When you know, and
I totally disagree with that line. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think it's opposite.
Okay, carry on.
I think being a friend is asking the questions, asking them to have the details. I think that's what people are searching.
Incongruence often is rife too. Does what they say agree with the state that they're in? What is state-dependent behaviour? What state are they in? What state do they want to be in with regard to this thing that they're talking about? All this information. So how are they relaying the tale compared to how they're going to tell you about it afterwards? They might, at the end of the session, tell you that they still don't like spiders. Well, I didn't do this to make you like spiders. You came here for pain control. I'm only joking. I didn't do this to make you like spiders. I did this to remove the terror, the fight or flight of or freeze response of when you see a tiny spider. I didn't do it to make you love spiders. I did this to remove the terror and to put you into a place of comfort so that when you do see a spider, you can deal with it rather than running out of the house, tearing off your clothes, thinking it's gone down your back. Or when it was a lady where a wasp got into the car, and Nick might remember this, the wasp got into the car when she was in the lion reserve of the safari park, and she got out of the car. And I said, you know, lions and tigers are bigger than wasps, aren't they? But her fear of being stung by the wasp was greater than her sense of where she was in time and space in the present moment. And so this is how powerful the mind is. And its protection mechanism sometimes gets a bit twisted and overdoes something. I need to protect her from the wasp. So let's run out into the lion reserve of the safari park to get away from the tiny little wasp. But you see, sometimes it's so interesting what people present. And then we've got what's called the presenting problem. All of this is in that first step. I get a little bit irritated with hypnotherapists that ask somebody about the problem and then sit them in the chair, close their eyes, right, let's read a script. Because it's often the way the tale is relayed and a lot of the NLP information that comes through in the information gathering stage that is vital to the entire process. And now I'll let you two speak and I'll give myself a rest. What do you think about that then? Any comments on the first stage of rapport build and information gathering and calibration?
What do you think, Nick?
I think it was perfect. So there's a couple of bits in there I picked up which I'd forgotten about actually, so thank you for that. Especially about not just benchmarking with words, but benchmarking with getting the bleeder to stand up some steps beforehand. and get them to do it afterwards. So that was a good point. Thank you for that, Jen. That's not
great.
something that I've done for quite a while, actually, and that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost like, again, social proof, isn't it? It's them proving to themselves that it's worked, as opposed to waiting for days for them not to spot the changes.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, with myself, when I was being taught how to be a hypnotherapist, I was on my course and somebody did a script with me. And I'm one of those that can't be hypnotized, you know? And so we all had to find something that was wrong with us, something that we wanted to change. And so I did have the spider thing. Didn't like spiders, never liked spiders. And it was probably installed by, when I was very young, somebody seeing a spider and scooping me up to take away the terrible offending creature and stamped on it voraciously. So my unconscious said, I vow forevermore to keep you away from these tiny, terrifying creatures that might eat you alive. Who knows? But the phobia was installed. So I thought, well, if this stuff works, I'll volunteer that I don't like spiders. Well, there's not liking spiders, and there's being terrified of spiders to the point that the fight or flight response is initiated, fight or flight or freeze. And I had to admit at that point in time, as I've done with many people since, that even the sight of the top of a tomato caught out of the corner of my eye, I was like, oh, sorry, it's not a spider. Oh. And if you get that sort of response, that somebody is comforted by the fact that it is actually the top of a tomato and it's not really a spider. And then in NLP terms, we say, is it the movement of the spider? If it stays still, is it okay? Is it that it's retreated into the corner and you're going to be up all night thinking it's going to get you? You know, what is it about the spider? Because you're much bigger than it. Blah, 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 blah. I've done so many spider phobia things since. So my spider phobia served me well. But I remember afterwards, there was no calibration before or after. And although the course I was on did include NLP and hypnosis and hypnotherapy, they were never combined. It was all very separate. And so there was no calibration. I know I'd had this script read to me, and I know I was willing for the fear to go. Not that I wanted to like spiders, but I wanted the fear to be reduced. I wanted the capacity. And this is where the student, we're all students on the course, was quite good in his asking me about it. So, okay, rather than, oh, you're frightened of spiders, right, here's a script to be free of your fear of spiders. No, exactly, Jenny. What is it about a spider? Is it the size? Is it the shape? Is it the speed? What is it exactly? How does it initiate? How do you do your spider phobia? What has to happen for you to have that fight or flight response? So he was very clever and precise in his questioning, which I still thank him for. Though we didn't have a calibration on a scale of 0 to 10. How frightened are you? And how does this affect you physiologically, emotionally, mentally? How does it affect your confidence in other things? None of that. Though I knew at the time I was scared. But at the end of it, he said, well, do you think that worked then? I don't know. I won't know till I see a spider. And that very evening, there was the biggest, blackest spider in the bath of the place I was living. You know, this is the way lovely coincidences happen. But a strange thing happened to me, whereas ordinarily I'd be shouting for somebody else. I was like, spider! What I found myself doing was I opened the back door first. I put my hand, not even a cup or anything, my hand under the spider, and I was chasing it round the bath, trying to get it into my hand so that I could take it outside. I never thought, Jenny, what are you doing? This is different to how you usually behave. I wanted to get that blooming thing and put it outside. Wasn't going to get it. I just wanted to capture the spider. But I never thought, and this is what has made me understand my own clients. I never thought at that time, oh, Jenny, look what you're doing. That's different to before. It was only when my husband sensed that the back door was open and thought, what's Jenny doing? And he came to the door of the bathroom, and bless him, he didn't say, oh my God, look what you're doing. He said, Jenny, your hand is hot and spiders are cold-blooded creatures. If you want the spider to get on your hand, you're going to have to go above it and tap it, and actually tap it onto your hand because it's going to burn its little feet when it's on your hand because you're so hot. Oh, okay, thank you. I chased it around, I knocked it, and I got it in my hand, and I put it outside. And then he said, you know, it's probably going to die anyway. What? Because I was thinking, I don't like killing creatures. Well, because it was such a big spider, and the body is where all the weight is, when you threw it, its body gravity would have meant that the body bounced and would have probably wrenched its legs off. I said, oh, it's going to die a horrible death. And then I was feeling sorry for the thing. Yeah? But I knew it had changed, and I couldn't wait to go back and tell this guy that whatever he did had worked.
Wow.
But what a shame that usually many hypnotherapists don't get that. You're not likely to ring up the hypnotherapist, hopefully they're busy with the next client, and tell them that, you know, I wasn't sure that had worked. Well, I just want to tell you this tale. It's going to take me 20 minutes to tell you, but I want to tell you that it worked. And if the hypnotherapist is any good, I'm thinking, yeah, I know it worked. Why do I need to hear this? You know? So having a calibration before and after is just imperative. And for the person to recognize that it's worked, even if you book a session 7 days afterwards, and please always book a follow-up session. You need a follow-up session for you to know it's worked and for them to reinforce the fact that it's worked. Whether you do any sessions after that, fair enough, but always do a second session, even if they're coming in just to prove to you that it's worked. So calibrate before and after and get some proof for you and for them that things are different now. And that's part of the process when you say, what would be different? What do you want to be different when at the end of this session today? And that still, even yesterday when I did a session with somebody, really throws them. They go, oh, well, they think they've got this big, terrible problem. And when you ask them specifically, what do you want to be different by the end of this session? How do you want life to be different for you? Oh, I hadn't really thought about that. Because they've been talking, like you said, Teresa, in terms of intangibility. Well, I want more confidence. Well, when you have this confidence, and where is it what level is it at the moment? Okay, 7. When it's at a 10, what will you be doing differently that you don't feel that you could do right now? So the importance of the calibration.
So I always set the intention in a session, but I don't do a measurable calibration. So that's lovely. Thank you. Taking that to the next level. So I always say, if I could wave a magic wand, what would your life look like tomorrow?
Beware of that phrase, look like.
Why?
So many visual people talk in visual terms, not recognizing that not everybody on the planet is visual. There are several modalities, but primarily there's visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And you'll see VAK everywhere, V-A-K. Are you a visual? Are you auditory? Are you a kinesthetic? Well, we're a mixture of all of those things, though we do have a primary modality. What's wonderful about these courses is that usually people start to engage with other modalities. Like if you're primarily kinesthetic, you start to become a little bit visual. If you're totally visual, start to be a bit auditory and kinesthetic. So by the end of the course, people who thought they were totally visual realise now that they are a combination of all. You kind of balance out. But there's also olfactory and gustatory as well. But certainly, people who are visual think everybody else is. And there are certain people that don't visualise, or they're not aware that they do. And so if you put them into a hypnotic state, or take them on a guided meditation and tell them to see the glorious trees and the branches swaying and the leaves gently falling from the trees, and you see over there the sparkling brook, and da-da-da, you see this and you see that. If the person is lying there with their eyes closed, I don't see anything, it's not working. If they don't visualize, they're not with you. They'll be talking themselves out of it. If you engage with the other senses and you see the trees swaying in the breeze and you hear the rustle of the leaves and you just notice how they gently fall, and then you notice the sparkling brook, the babbling brook. You can hear it gently babbling away, and you put your hand in the water and feel the cool water over your fingers. You're engaging with all of the senses. And so even if they say, well, I didn't actually see the trees, but I felt the water. Oh, yeah, I felt the water, yeah. And I can imagine what it sounds like to be near a babbling brook. I remember that before. So I would lose the word see, and I would engage with the word sense.
Sense?
Because it's sometimes far too complicated to think, well, if they don't see, I've got to make sure that they hear and that they taste and that they smell and that they, you can taste the sea in the air, you know, but some people don't smell, particularly older people. So some senses dwindle with age and with illnesses, etc. So if you say sense, the unconscious will use all that it can to recreate that scene.
Brilliant.
Sense is much more all-encompassing. So given that we've established rapport and we've got some sort of scale and some measurement that we can use at the end to know that things are different, then we'll talk more about the second step, which is the meta-questioning. When a person says, they never listen to me at work, and you just say the word, what, never? Well, you know what I mean. No, what do you mean? That's meta-questioning. When people generalize, distort, and delete aspects of their experience to embellish or to vivify their view of the world. If one is in self-pity or anger or in anything other than a balanced state, when you've got somebody who is emphatically, emotionally trying to tell you how bad everything is, then we don't do it deliberately, but we do distort. We give different voice tones to something somebody said. So we distort, we miss out vital bits of information, we miss out the compliment and just focus on the insult. So we delete, we distort, and we generalise. They always do this to me. They've never liked me. Well, never. So deletions, distortions, and generalisations need to be addressed. And they can be addressed just by a word. Never? Well, you know what I mean. No, I don't actually know what you mean. You know, you're almost saying, you are a complete stranger to me. I know nothing about your life. Please tell me what happened with more clarity. Well, they didn't exactly say so, but I knew what they meant. Did you? Okay. So do you see what I mean? With meta-questioning, it's not what you'd usually say to your husband or your wife. It's not what you'd usually say to someone in general conversation. But when you've got an hour, 1 hour to do something wonderful for this person so they know that they've been helped, then you kind of need to shortcut things. And that's where the distancing languages comes in as well. Yeah, well, I don't eat anything all day because I've been trying to lose weight for ages. And you know what it's like when you haven't eaten all day because you've been really good. You know, when you've been really good and you haven't eaten anything all day and you've suffered at work, you've seen everybody else eat the chocolate cake. And then you get home and you realise it's 9 o'clock and you eat everything in sight. No. Oh, it's just me then. Oh, God. That's the way to not be friends with somebody. And when you're a therapist, you're not their friend, which is kind of odd because you tend to also get lots of friends who are therapists when you're in our game, don't you? But when your friend, who happens to be a therapist, changes to therapist mode and you want their therapy, then you kind of make that shift, don't you? You've got friends who are therapists and you allow them to help you. But small talk and being able to talk freely and have conversations and say what you like and be forgiven for saying the wrong thing, that's a different modality to